If we are giving value, by definition, we must have value. Someone else is just someone, and we are also just someone, because to someone else, we are someone else. According to a Google definition, law of attraction is a belief that thinking about something will cause it to manifest in your life. But that is not the only way to manifest things in your life. Because if you are thinking about something, right, what is thoughts? Thoughts are in your mind. They're words and beliefs that you have that essentially cause you to behave a certain way, right? But when we think something, the reason that it works is because we think something, and then the way that we think influences us to feel a different way, influences us to act a different way. So essentially, if you think about it, the components of the formula is the thoughts cause the feeling causes the action. So the components are feeling and action, right? And that causes a different reality, but the feeling is not the only way we can actually cause our reality to change. If we don't have the feeling, we can simply shift to action, and by shifting to action, we will then, without having the feeling yet, we can simply start to be as if. We can behave a certain way, and then just behaving that way will essentially change our reality. Because if you feel like you're not in the reality that you want, you're also not acting in the way that you would be acting as if you were in the reality that you want, right? So even though it is very true that changing the way that we feel will change our reality, because by changing how we feel changes how we act, changes our reality. But if we don't have that feeling yet, if it's really strong, we can start to act, and acting will influence our reality. It will change what is external, and we will then change our feeling. Because again, if you think about it, if when you are a kid, right, you grow up to be a certain way because of your environment. So essentially, your environment, what is going on, influences how you feel. So it works that same way too. The feeling can influence the environment. When we generate a different feeling, we behave a certain way, we attract a different thing, and the law of attraction works. However, there is another way to do it. We can take the environment and influence our feeling, which will then generate more action and again give us more of the reality that we want. So when we think about the law of attraction, I think there's two ways to do it. We can generate the feeling first, or we can simply generate the behavior. Because when you generate the behavior first, even if you don't have that feeling, you will already be moving closer to the reality that you want by taking actions and steps towards creating that. And even if you don't have that feeling yet, right, the feeling will follow, because you will start acting that way, and then you will start to think that, well, if I'm acting this way, then by definition I must be having that attribute to act this way, right? It's kind of like, think about if you're in a state of lack. What does a state of lack mean? State of lack means you don't have enough, but it means you don't have enough that you are receiving. And by definition, if you don't have enough, you cannot give, right? So if you want to get out of a state of lack, we always expect to receive something, or we think, well, maybe if I'll just feel worthy, but that is not the only way to do it. Because if you think about what does a state of lack mean, right? It's a lack of receiving and it's a lack of giving. It's a closed loop. So in order to get out of that loop, we always wait for receiving, but if we start to give, you essentially break that loop, because by definition, if you're in a state of lack, you cannot give. So when you start to give, you break that loop, because you are no longer compatible to being in a state of lack. When you start to give, it means by definition you must have something of value to give, because you're giving. When you are giving, energetically, it signals to, I have something of value to give. So even if you're not there yet feeling-wise, but you are already giving, you are breaking that loop energetically. You're breaking that loop of being in a state of lack, and you are moving towards a state of abundance. And in due time, the other part will follow, because if you think about the world as a mirror, right, that our internal reality is a reflection of our external, and our external reality is a reflection of our internal. And the first part I said, it's not really something we hear about much, right? We always think, well, the external is a reflection of our internal, and that is very true. However, if you think about kids grow up, their the way that you are as a kid, what molds you is your environment. So essentially, when you grow up, you're a byproduct of your environment in some way, shape, or form. So our internal is also a reflection of our external, as is external a reflection of internal. It really goes both ways. But we don't really think about it like that. We often think about one way. We think that in order for us to get out of a state of lack, we must receive something. We must do something that will make us receive. While that is true in some cases, we can also just start to give. And by giving, we break that loop and we move into a place of abundance, and we will soon receive as well, because that's just how that works. When you move out of a place of lack and you start to give, eventually you're going to move more into a place of abundance, because when you first start, if you're fully in a state of lack and you don't receive and you don't give, you're 100% there. When you start to give, you start to move out of a place of lack and you start to be more in the abundance, but it doesn't happen overnight, because you were 100% here. When you start to give, you start to move little by little into a place of abundance, and little by little abundance will come to you in receiving as well. And then you will move more and more into a place of abundance where you can both give and receive, because we cannot be in a place of abundance by just receiving. Because if we're just receiving, sure, but giving feels just as good. And you can think about it that there is more than one type of abundance. We always think abundance is just money, but it's not the only kind of abundance. And oftentimes when we give and we receive, it's actually an exchange of abundance. When we give something, we receive something else that is of the same value energetically. And it's usually like money for services, but both have value, both have abundance. This is how we make money in this world, right? You give services, you receive money, right? So essentially, you can give something and you will receive something else. And it really depends on what kind of state of lack we're stuck in. If we're stuck in the place of lack of not having money, we can give a different kind of abundance out to the world or to the people, and eventually it will also be that we will receive the abundance that we need, but it may not always be the way we expect it. And the key, I believe, here is to not insist on the outcome, to not insist on what it is that will happen, because when we insist on something, we are resisting anything else. When we insist on that if I give this, I must receive X, Y, and Z, when we insist on that, we kind of shut down the door for everything else. We shut down the door for potential things that might be even better for us that we don't necessarily yet know about. And so that insistence of the outcome imposes an expectation of something, and it incurs a resistance of our own to anything else. And by definition, what you resist persists. And so if you resist something, you're generating energy towards that. You're generating energy towards something you don't want. And especially if we give something and we expect something in return and we think we might not get that, we start to kind of feel like, well, but I want that, right? We start to kind of feel almost tense inside. That tension that we feel when we don't get something we want is resistance. So what is the way to resolve that resistance, right? The one way to resolve a resistance of such sort is to release any expectations. Simply give because it feels good to give, or because this is something that you wanted to do. If we're in a state of lack and we feel like giving is a stretch, sometimes we think about giving to someone else, right? We think giving to someone else, but it doesn't have to be else. It's just someone. You give to someone, and sometimes we need to give to ourselves. Sometimes we're stuck in a place of lack in different ways because maybe we're not giving enough to ourselves, and so when we don't give enough to ourselves, we don't have enough to give to others, right? Sometimes we think, oh, but I'm stuck here in the place of lack and I just don't know how to give someone else, and I'm trying to use the law of attraction and I'm trying to think and feel a different way so then I can attract what I want, but it's not working for me, right? Well, if it's not working for you, then maybe it's just because we're relying on one medium, we're relying on one way, and we are insisting that one way must work. But the way that this universe works is that we're always given with what the universe knows is best for us. because we don't know everything, right? Our mind is very limited. Our human mind is just a combination of our past, present, and all the kind of rational things we can come up with. But it's not all that there is. There is different kinds of intelligences out there that we just don't understand on a mind level, right? But then when we want to do something, we oftentimes get upset with it, right? So it's the same principle of when you think of wanting something and you're getting upset, that upset is the same resistance that you're generating by insisting on the outcome, and you're essentially putting more energy on that. So in order to release it, it's just important to simply focus on what it is that you can do that will make you feel good to do. And that can be giving to you, it can be giving to someone else. And giving doesn't mean one thing. Giving can come in different forms in many ways, right? Because when you think about it, there is an abundance of money, but there is an abundance of the mind, there is abundance of the body and the feeling, right? And there's all those levels they can capitalize on. Sometimes we can just give more in terms of our attention. We can give more of our heart. Sometimes we can give more in terms of our gifts. Maybe you have a gift you can share with the world. Maybe you have a gift you can simply engage in. And sometimes we don't yet know how we're going to turn about it. We just know that, well, in that moment, if you feel stuck in something, it's because we're trying to go one way, right? But then the universe is putting like a wall on us and it's saying, well, you can't really go this way, so we can try to go somewhere else, right? And again, if we feel stuck, it's because we're trying to bump against that wall, okay? It's like if I really want something and I'm not getting it and I feel stuck, it's because I'm trying to go this way, but I'm not breaking the wall. And sometimes it's because I'm not supposed to break the wall. I'm supposed to go around it. I'm supposed to do something else first, and maybe it will lead me towards a way that is better or easier, more beneficial to me. And sometimes we don't even know what that is yet. But the only way we know where we need to go is we follow our feeling, right? We follow what feels good for us to do, and following that feeling will lead you to where you're meant to be. Because if you think about it, right, we're here on this earth. How are we here on this earth? How do we function? Why are we here, right? We are here to learn and grow. And so, therefore, it makes sense that there's some kind of way in which we must be guided to learn and grow. That guidance is our feeling. Our feeling is the one that guides you to where you're meant to be. And why do I say that? Because if you think about it, what feels good and what doesn't feel good, right? If we know nothing of existence and if we know nothing of anything, we just know that we feel good or we don't feel good. Well, which one do you prefer, right? You prefer to feel good always, right? So it just makes sense to do something that will make you feel good. And there's really this thing where we think that sometimes maybe giving doesn't feel good, but giving feels just as good as receiving, because at the core of it is essentially the same idea. The idea is that you are a part of the whole and someone else is a part of the whole. When you give something, it's one part taking care of another part, right? When you receive something, it's the same thing. It's the other part taking care of this part. So it's two parts taking care of each other. That feels really good both ways. And I think that in a way, if you are trying to break out of that loop, there's two ways to break out of that loop, because when we're stuck in that loop, we're waiting for that part to take care of us. Essentially, that loop means something somewhere needs to be taken care of, but we're not taking care of it. And if the question is, how do you give from your heart? Well, it boils down to doing something that will make you feel good. Because if we're stuck in the state of life, then we just don't feel good, right? We're waiting for something to come to make us feel good, but it's not coming. And we're like, well, I don't know what to do because it's just not coming. Well, sometimes it's good to look the other way and see what else can you do that will make you feel good. What other thing can you capitalize on that will make you feel more abundant within yourself? And more abundant means more fulfilled in life and just more positive about how you are in this world, like how you feel in your current state of being. That is also a form of abundance. Because why do people chase money, right? People chase money because people think money is the only form of abundance, but they only chase that because they want to be happy. So essentially they think that money will make them happy. Therefore, money is an abundance and happiness is an abundance, but we really seek money, which is just a tool that will allow us to do things in this world to become happy. But we have other tools we can use to be happy, right? We have our mind, we can generate ideas, and we can find things that we like simply that feel good to do. Simply things that feel good while we are doing it that can make us happy too. We often get into this tunnel vision of just chasing something that we think will eventually make us successful, but what is success? Right? We think that success is wealth, we think that's all the material things like a big car, big house, but is that actually success? What defines success for you? And if you say yes to that, well, it's only because you think that will make you happy. So essentially, success is being happy, right? And so if you really want to be successful in life with anything, essentially it means being happy. Because there is people that have very little and they are very happy, and there is people that have a whole bunch and they're not happy. Well, which one is successful, right? It really depends on how you define success. And why do you want to be successful as a person who has a whole lot if you are not happy? Does that make any sense, right? Why do we want to be anyone that is successful if we're not happy? The whole point of this life is to be happy, right? I mean, tell me, what sense does life make if you cannot be happy, right? And sometimes I think we have to chase that just to see that it doesn't make us happy, and that is okay. If you feel like that's what you need to do, then that's what you need to do. Maybe sometimes it can make us happy for a time, right? But we all need whatever we need. But the only thing is that there is always more than one way to approach a situation. And if we feel stuck in something, we feel like maybe we're not receiving, well, it's only because we're expecting to, right? So when we're able to release that expectation, when we're able to accept that you did your best, you did what you could, you tried your best, and that is all you can do. The most you can do is just strive. The most you can do is just go forward in life. The most you can do is try to do things, do your best, do what feels good, follow your passion, and don't insist on the outcome because we don't know the outcome. We cannot control the external environment as much as we would like to, right? We can only do our best and know that what needs to happen will. And sometimes things that happen that don't make us happy, they sometimes guide us towards a different direction that will, in the end, be where we need to be. And that can be hard to accept sometimes because we don't see that in that moment. We just really don't see that. But the most you can do is just trust and do it for the feeling of how you feel when you do it, not for the outcome. If you do anything, do it because it feels good to do it. Because, and I think it makes sense, right? When you do something, in that moment it can feel good because you're expecting the outcome, but in the moment it still feels good, right? So whatever the reason is, it feels good, and we don't always get what we expect. Okay, so it's like, what can you do if you do your best and you don't get what you expected? What can you do? I mean, being upset about it is unlikely to change anything, but we do feel upset, and sometimes we get stuck there too. We get stuck being upset because, well, there is nothing you can do. But, well, if there is nothing you can do, then why linger there? If you are walking and you bump against a wall and there is nothing you can do to pass that wall, why would we sit and cry there that we cannot pass the wall, right? Does that make sense, right? Well, once we acknowledge that we cannot pass the wall, we can grieve about it. That's okay. We can let that feeling out. And then when we acknowledge that, yeah, there is really nothing I can do about it, as much as I liked whatever is behind it, if I just cannot get it, that is okay. There's something else waiting for you. And I think the most we can do is just know that there's something else that will be there, that will be what we need, and it will be whatever we need it to be. Because we all need different things, but it doesn't really make sense to get stuck on that. Because again, if you go against it, it's just a wall. Okay, so it doesn't matter how much you want that. There's a wall. You can't. You just can't get it. So just go the other way. Go the other way. Find something else that will make you feel good. And sometimes it can mean taking a break. It really depends. But just find something that will make you feel good in the moment. If you need to grieve for a little while, that is okay too. But I think sometimes being stuck and bumping our head against the wall is not going to make the wall go down. It doesn't matter how much we want the wall to go down. It will just break our head and we'll just be hurt more, you know? So it's like, yeah, just follow your passion and Let go of the outcome. Whatever happens will need to happen. And the most you can do is just know that sometimes the feeling follows the action as the action follows the feeling. There's two ways to do it, and you know which one is best for you. Also, when you are in lack and you don't feel like you can give to someone, right? When we start to give to someone, it's because we think someone deserves it, even if it's you. If you don't feel like you can give to yourself or you prefer to give to someone else, depending on what it is, and you start to give them, right? You feel like they deserve that, but in essence, you deserve that too. Because if we think of it in terms of someone else is just someone, and we are also just someone, because to someone else, we are someone else. So all of us have the same value. Therefore, if sometimes when we are in a state of lack, we don't feel like we can receive. It's almost like we feel like we are unworthy of receiving. And these beliefs can be subdued very deep and heavily in our subconscious. And sometimes we don't always have access to them, right? And we don't necessarily know what to do about it. However, when we start to give, when we start to do for the other, if we are giving value, by definition, we must have value. And so that feeling will grow. You will feel better because it's almost like you're doing something of value and someone's appreciating you, right? And sometimes when we don't appreciate ourselves, someone appreciating us is someone appreciating us. So sometimes when we're not that someone, someone else doing it for us feels good, right? So I really think of it like someone else is just someone. You are also someone to someone else. Therefore, you and that other person have the same value. And so you can give and receive to you or to someone else, because when you say myself, it is just a self that you have direct access to. Someone else is just another self that they have access to, right? If you really think about that, like we are this awareness, a consciousness inside of our body, and we have an awareness of stuff, right? We are awareness inside this vessel, right? You are inside of your vessel. And so we only have awareness directly accessed through this particular expression, right? This is our self. Like my self is the self, the body that I have awareness to, right? Someone else is also the same as awareness inside of their body, and that particular awareness has an expression through that body, experiencing it in that state, right? But at the core of it, we have access to our own awareness, right? And they have access to their awareness. So it's like we are essentially both awareness expressing through different mediums. And sometimes it can be a little bit maybe trippy or tricky to understand it, but just think of it like cats. When you look at cats, right, when there's a whole bunch of cute kittens, right, they're all cute little kittens. Okay, cats are all cats. They're all amazing. They're all wonderful creatures, pretty, furry, wonderful. They're like gods. Okay, I think cats are like gods, but they're wonderful, right? But all cats are cats. They're the same. We don't say this cat is better than the other cat because of the fur color. Maybe we prefer that fur color, right? Maybe you like that, but it's not better. It doesn't have more value than the other cat with a different fur color, right? Because they're both cats. It's just to you, that's the one you prefer, so you might prefer that one. But at the core of it, someone else will prefer a different one, right? So essentially, if you prefer a white cat, someone else prefers a black cat. Someone else likes an orange cat. Okay, they're all equal value. We just prefer a different thing. It's the same with everything, and we are just like cats because we're humans. And it doesn't really make sense to kind of say that one is better than the other because people prefer different things. So you could think of it like the word better. What it really means is just the one that you more prefer. So when we say something is better for us, I'm sorry, I think the train is trying to argue with me. When we think something is better than something else, it's only because we prefer that, right? When something is better for you, maybe you think looking good is better, but it's only because we prefer that. So if you literally replace everything that we say better with the word prefer, that really makes sense if you think about it, right? And so I think with that, It just makes sense to know that you and someone else are equal. It's just like taking two different cats, okay? It's just that we prefer different things. We express through different mediums of consciousness, meaning that we are awareness. You and I were both aware of stuff, and we just express through our body, and we have our own lessons and paths and things we have to do. And so, when it comes to giving and receiving, right? If I am a consciousness, and I'm in a state of, if you're in a state of black, right, as a consciousness, it means this particular expression is not receiving and it's not giving. So, a way out of that, because if you're in a state of abundance, you are both receiving and giving. So, you have to go from not receiving and not giving to receiving and giving, right? To be fully in abundance, you have to have both parties of that. Sometimes when we are in lack, we expect to receive something, and sometimes we receive it, but if we don't do anything with it, if we don't actually give value, and value can mean different things, right? Value can mean you use it to create something, you help someone else, maybe you do something beautiful with it, right? It's doing something that generates a pleasant feeling, right? And that doesn't mean wasting it. It means doing something of value that maybe uses your gifts, kind of like using what you received, giving it into the world. And if you're giving it to yourself, well, that's all well and great, but there's only so much you can receive that only gives to one consciousness, because we are a consciousness, and there's only so much we can give and receive to ourselves, right? Eventually, it's not like we're always receiving from ourselves. So if we're receiving from someone else, it makes sense to give to someone else, right? Because it's like a two-way street. So if we want to get out of that fully state of lack, because if you're in a state of lack and you're just receiving and you're only giving to yourself, it will eventually run out. To truly stay in a place of abundance, even if we receive, we must give. Because we already received, we then must give value in some way, shape, or form. That can literally mean taking care of your family, right? It really depends. But it's not like we're not an island in and of ourselves, and people that do just receive, it's because they're still working and they're still giving value. But when you just receive, like out of the blue, like a lottery, there is a reason that they say that people that win the lottery, most majority of them just spend all the money and just return to where they started with, right? Because they take that money and they don't do anything productive with it. Like if I won a lottery, I would just invest all the money and make more money. It's like, and then just help people, because then it's like you want to do something with it. But people sometimes, if they just receive like a lottery, they just waste it. People that work for it, that receive it, it's because they are already giving. Oftentimes when we receive, it's because we are already giving. We don't even know it. It's like people that receive money and become wealthy, well, they are already giving. They're giving their services and they're getting paid for it, but they are giving value in essence, right? Some people say, well, this person just got paid for no reason, but if they did, means they gave some sort of value. Maybe they made someone feel a certain way, right? Like when you tip someone well, right? Why do you do it? They made you feel a kind of way, and based on how they made you feel, you give or don't give them a good or no tip, right? It really depends on how they made you feel, right? So if they give value to you, if they make you feel good, then you give them money. By definition, they have already given value for exchange of money. They're in abundance, right? But it's like you receive that attention and then you want to give, right? So it's like this principle. It's not something we often really think about, but I think it can be interesting to consider it. And yeah, I hope that makes some sense. And thank you for watching. And the value can be different things. Like you can use it to create gifts. What?